Good afternoon. My name is Pastor Crespo Jr., research librarian and archivist for the Bronx County Historical Society. I am joined by Doug Condit at his apartment in the Norwood section of the Bronx to conduct the very first oral history interview for the Bronx County Historical Society's Veterans Archival Project. I want to thank you so much for accepting us here today, sir.
Glad to.
So, how are you this afternoon?
Fine, thank you.
Great. We like to start these oral histories by asking the narrators, to tell us a little about their family history and background and how you got to the Bronx.
Okay, I was born in Pennsylvania because my dad was stationed there during World War II.
Mm-hmm.
I was born right at the end of the war. My parents were both from New Jersey, so we were living there. And unfortunately, as an infant, I had severe asthma. I was lucky my physician lived in the same block as we did because he was often up 3, 4 in the morning giving me epinephrine so I could breathe again. When I was 4, I had a baby brother born. He had a ruddy complexion. They thought he was going to become asthmatic too. And at that time, it was suggested either by my local physician or by a specialist that our family consider moving to either Arizona or Colorado. The weather is different out there. They've got different humidity. And chances are you'll never have an asthmatic attack again. My dad was fortunate enough to get a decent job in Colorado. We moved there, so I grew up there. Until high school, I lived in Denver. Then my family moved to a small town up in the mountains called Glenwood Springs. It has the world's largest outdoor natural swimming pool, all from Sulphur Springs. And it's fantastic. I don't know if you ski or do any.
No.
Okay. Because skiing, the first day of every winter, every skier that you see will be sore, they'll be stiff. You get in the pool, I mean, you're hurting from head to toe. You get in the pool in 15, 20 minutes, all the pain is gone. That's so great. Doc Holliday was just a historical figure to me. Moved to Glenwood because he had severe lung problems. And that's where he finally died. And the only thing it says on his tombstone is he died with his boots on. So, then when I was in Glenwood, I initially went to university in Colorado State. But I was pre-law. And I had my first legal course as a sophomore. And I had to lie to get in. You had to be at least a junior. My God, I found out that being a lawyer isn't what we see on TV. It's not what we see these people today. The people we see on TV, quote unquote, that type of lawyer makes very little, if any, money. They're taking care of poor clientele. Their clients often don't pay them. The lawyers that make money are those who go to work for a company like GM or Ford or RCA and work in a large factory type situation or like a classroom for the lab. That was not my lifestyle. So I dropped out of college. I wasn't sure what to do. I spent a winter down in Palm Beach. I worked as a waiter. Unfortunately, the Vietnam War was going on at that time. Being from a small town, there were only 48, 49 in my graduating class. The second I was out of high school, my draft board knew that I was available. I had no idea how many people were potentially ahead of me, how many weren't. I just knew I didn't want to be drafted into the Army or the Marine Corps. So I joined up and I had to sign a 4-year enlistment with the Navy. So that's how I got into the military, which turned out to be ironic. Leaving, while I was in a small town, I had to transfer, go to Denver the day I was leaving. according to them in Denver, my recruiter hadn't told them I was coming that day. So they put an experienced NCO on my tail who worked with me all day. We got me out of there that evening. During the day, he told me, he says, look, he says, you know, you've got 2 years of college. He said, if you go in without a school, you could end up as a deckkeeper, which means you sit on a ship. When you go into port, everybody goes out to party. You're there scraping paint. He says, I have 5 schools available today, 3 engineers, 2 medical. I'd worked on ambulances as ambulance attendant and everything. I said, fine, give me one of the medicals. I figured this would be great, you know. Sick bay on a Navy ship is kind of cool. They don't mention to you the other side. The fact that the Marine Corps is a division of the Navy, and they don't have their own Corps personnel. They use those in the Navy.
That's right.
So went to boot camp, went to a cool course school, enjoyed course school, I really did. At the end of course school, they were so short Marine Corpsmen, they took our whole Corps company and put us into Field Medical Training School, which is at Marine Corps Base Camp Pendleton, and we learned how to work with Marines. The second we finished that up, I had to return to a Navy hospital for what had been a 2-year assignment for 6 months to learn the basics, I guess, about. In other words, I've been taught the basics of military medicine. Now I was learning how to use it. At 6 months, I was transferred to the Marine Corps. When you were in the Navy, I mean, in the Army, you had an MOS or an AOS? Or,
An MOS is what we called it.
Yes. Yeah, mine was as Field Corpsman. You don't see too many of those on submarines or aircraft carriers.
Very true.
Yeah. So the second they had me out of the hospital, they had me right with the Marines. Initially at Camp Pendleton, which was kind of cool. We kind of had 5 days off, and then every weekend we'd be drumming up support for the Vietnam War, San Diego, LA, San Francisco. So I got to tour. There was a lot of free food and free alcohol, but you know, my bottom line, I was all of a sudden, Tet happened in Vietnam, and our unit was assigned to go over. At that point, I was an E3, and I was senior corpsman of the line company. Required an E5. They brought in an E5. I knew I wasn't going to be the senior corpsman anyway, but I'd been out with the line company for 6 months, so they put me back in the aid station, which is great with me, because I'd already learned how to suture. So here we're in Nam, and I'm sewing up left and right. Not having it that bad. Going out on occasional patrols with people in the headquarters company. Although we're in a combat area and our troops are really engaged in combat, it's something that I wasn't engaged in. Occasionally, our unit would be hit with artillery fire, but it never came near the aid station. I'd taken the time and liberty on my free time to fill up sandbags and had them all stacked up next to my bed anyway, you know, on the outside of my barrack. So I wasn't that worried. About 5 months in, they rotated me out to a line company. Oh, on the airplane over, I went from being, second we crossed something, I went from being an E3 to an E4. So I'm suddenly a petty officer. And this, we went over in February. In April, they promoted me to an E5. So that's why all of a sudden I can now become the senior corpsman of a line company with theoretically 7 people under me, with wounds, with problems we never had. We never had a full complement of corpsmen. So that was my, you know, first. All of a sudden it was announced our colors are coming back to the States. I'm going, all right, it's cool, you know. I'm here 7 months, quick vacation. You know, I didn't get one scratch. All of a sudden, there's a catch-22. if you have over a year left on an enlistment, the second you get back to the States, they can resend you to Nam for a full 12-month tour. If you have less than a year left, you'll be discharged early. I had about a year and a half left. So I finished out my tour, but they sent me to a different company. They sent me to an engineer battalion, which is kind of cool, kind of different. Before I went to the engineers, when I was still with the 27th, when I first went with a senior corpsman of a line company, we had the hottest area. It was called Doug Condit. Every time we sent a patrol down there, we'd lose at least 1 or 2 Marines. They had a sharpshooter. They had whatever, sniper, whatever you are, down there that was dead accurate. He was getting everybody right between the eyes. And so we're constantly losing people. But after a couple of weeks within, our company was rotated from the hottest area to the coolest. We had a bridge that we had to protect between us and the net. It's where there had been a previous bridge, which you can see where it had blown down into the water. And now we had a temporary one. And at night, it was interesting to send out tanks. And one would be on each side, one would come up from the Nang area, one come up. And one night when the VC was in our area, and you could see them going across the road. I asked the guys on the tank if I could jump in. They said, yeah. In the whole front of it, they had night vision. And it's like you're looking at a TV screen where you see all the guys, it's not clear, in other words, you can't get faces, but you get to see the body just going across. The tank couldn't fire at them because straight down the road was a Vietnamese camp they were running in front. Next was our permanent camp, which they were running in front, and they went into the bush. Yeah, but it was interesting to get to see something like that. So when the colors went back, I got to go to a rear area, got to go to the side of the engineers. We're supposedly safe. Going back to when I first got to Nam, I'm a non-combatant. I was issued a 45. You don't want to wear a 45. Officers wear a 45. Radiomen wear a 45. So I went over, I signed out an M16. I looked like every Marine you want to say. I got called by the Armory, saying I had 24 hours to turn the M16 back in or be court-martialed, as per the colonel. I don't know where he was coming from. The Geneva Convention is very clear. A corpsman cannot be an aggressive, whatever you want to call it, cannot be an aggressor, but can use anything at his or her disposal to protect himself and his patient. I prefer using an M16 because that way, when I walk in line with 40 other men, you can't tell who's a corpsman and who's not. But the first time I met a dead Marine out of there or a wounded one, I just kept the next M16. No, so it wasn't signed out, no big deal. Mm-hmm. But it's interesting the way they got funny rules. There's ways around the rules. You know that. Mm-hmm. You know. How long were you on? I'm sorry.
20 years.
Oh, you did a full. Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did my full. I didn't even do my 4. They let me out 3 months early.
Good. Okay.
No, so, okay. So I came back to the States. When I was, before I'd gone to Nam, when I had my first duty station as a Navy corpsman, I read in the paper about this new development. There was this brand new profession they come out with called physician assistant. And it initially started using 3 former Navy corpsmen. I go, it's cool. I enjoy what I'm doing in the Navy. Now they want me. This is what I'm going to do when I get out of, Of course, I didn't know I was going to NOM. I didn't know I might not get it, But, so I already, I'd gone from becoming an attorney to now I'm going to become a PA. So that's all I thought about. So when I got out in the military, there was only one school at that time. It was Duke. And I applied at Duke, but I made, things in hindsight. I was invited to Duke for an interview in February. I postponed it till June because I'd be in the Navy until June, and I didn't want to use leave time. The leave times are very valuable. And they said fine. They had no problem. What they didn't realize is when they get people that were experienced or they liked, they would offer them a spot in February, so they didn't lose them. Now, had they told me that, I would have been there in February. In the meantime, Duke accepted, I think, 60 of us for 40 slots. They accepted 20 more than they were allowed. But we got letters saying, this is tentative. We're trying to expand the class size. We need Mr. Duke's permission. He said no. Then I got a letter. They got 5 spots left to go to draw a name. So it wasn't one of the 5. The last shop said your name. Then I got a letter. Sorry, you were one of the 5 selected. However, you come down here and work at Duke for a year, and we'll put you in next to the spot. In the meantime, while I was down at Duke for my interview, I met a PA who graduated from Duke, and he was now starting a program at Yale. He asked me if he'd be interested in it. He said in on my interview, and he knew what happened there. He knew what's going on, and he said, obviously, I don't know who's going to be accepted, who's not. He said, but if anything happens where you cannot go to Duke, would you be willing to come to Yale? I said, I'd certainly consider it. So I'm thinking about that. I'm phoning Yale. Nobody had ever heard of the Duke. It's the way life goes. One morning, like 6 in the morning, I got a phone call from University of Alabama, and a Duke graduate was starting a new PA program there. When I'd gone to Duke, somebody there gave him a list of the 20 of us, or at least part of it, a list of us who had been accepted and then not taken in because the class was full. And he called me, asked me if I'd be interested in Alabama. And he wanted me to fly down for an interview. I'll never forget, his name was A. Roger Lamb. I don't know what the A is. I go, I'd like to. I don't mind attending Alabama. I said, but, I just spent all my money flying down to Mr. Duke's place. What are my chances like? He says, Doug, he said, I guarantee you, if you fly down for an interview, you'll have a spot. I said, now what day did you want me? So I went down for the interview, and it was interesting. He wasn't totally honest with me, but it turned out to be honest. No, I mean, they put you through all these batteries, a psychological exam, psychiatric exam, all kinds of these. Well, there's no right or wrong answer, yeah. And at the end of it, congratulations, you mentioned there were only 12 of us, but full scholarship, but nice. So that's how I became a PA. Like I said, that's my background. So I was down there at the University of Alabama. And down there, they had 2 different programs. They had PA and SA. I was in PA, but we learned everything. In other words, I had surgical rotations. In fact, I did orthopedics and general surgery down at Tuskegee Institute, which you might have heard of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's interesting. They had 1,000 beds at that time at Tuskegee. One of the reasons they had so many is it used to be the black VA for Southern United States. If you were a black veteran, you got sick in Texas, were having a heart attack, they put you on a train and send you to Tuskegee. Any place in the Deep South, black vets all went to Tuskegee. Equal care, yes, but then in Tuskegee, they already knew what happened in people with long-term athletics. But somebody decided to run an experiment where they were not treating blacks and Tuskegee veterans that came in with VD. They were following them. See how long they deteriorated just the way the book said they would.
Wow.
And so they had a large number of these people that were or were not veterans who now needed hospitalization. So they took up part of the meds. But being at Tuskegee Institute, seeing life from that side was interesting. I got offered a full-time job at Tuskegee. Wasn't interested, but while I was down there, a female PA from Montefiore, she'd been up here maybe 9 months already, had heard how great some of the PAs at Alabama were. So she came down, she met with all of us, and she offered myself, another PA down there, the opportunity to come up here and interview at Montefiore as surgical PAs, which we were both interested in. So Mike and I both flew up here, interviewed for a position at Montefiore, and that was 50 years ago. So I just finished my 50th year this past year.
Wow.
So I've done 50 years at Monte, lived in the same apartment for 50 years. Yeah.
Really?
Yes.
That is so interesting. So we left off at your completion of 50 years of service at Montefiore Medical Center, while also living here in the same apartment in the Norwood section for the last 50 years also.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've been very active in the Norwood section.
That's right. Could you talk to us about, during those 50 years in your medical career as a physician's assistant, you were still very busy outside of your medical field. Can you talk to us about the activism that you've done here in the neighborhood?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's been different
Sure.
things at different times. I've always been active down here. We had an organization for Friends of the Williamsburg Zoo, and we mainly did a lot of cleanup work. There was very few full-time employees, and so we did a lot of cleaning up. We did a lot of planning, and that type of manual type labor, try to keep the park in it. There were minor problems with the park. We have a lot of skateboarders in this area.
Right.
There's a fence totally around Montefiore, and it's in cement. And up here by the west entrance to the park, a lot of skateboarders used to skate there. Well, Montefiore Preservation Community or whatever built a 3-story condo. They've got 6 condos. Yeah, it's not a very big condo, but they've got 6 units which they sell. A woman that lives in the center main level one used to be calling the police routinely because she couldn't watch TV with her front door open because the skateboarders were making too much noise. Would they please get them out of the park? Yeah, I mean, some of the police would come down there and they'd be real human beings. They'd pull around, they'd sit in their car for maybe 15, 20 minutes, have a cigarette or whatever, and they'd leave. Saw me, oh my God, one sergeant, you blank blanks, get the blank out of here, go play someplace else. Yeah. So I mean, it was totally back and forth. But I mean, routinely, she'd call. The kids never, they needed a place to skate. So all this little stuff I used to do, I decided to work on a new skate park. The chair of Friends of the Old at that time, I talked to her. There was a female in charge of the skateboard committee. She wasn't doing anything. I said, do you mind if, so she gave me the committee. So I worked with the skateboarders. One of them started up a petition. I worked with a local media. I don't know if you ever met David Cruz.
No.
He used to be editor of the Norwood News. He did a front page editorial on why we need a skate park. He, like other people I know, was Latino, and he thinks maybe if a lot of the kids were whiter, maybe we would have had one earlier. I worked with him. I made contact over the years with a reporter for Pix 11 named Blake Maka. I emailed him. He came out and did a beautiful piece on putting in a skate park out here, why it was needed, etc. It was so good. I get a call about 10 days later from Channel 12. Oh, we saw his picture. It was great. Can you put the skateboarders together for us? I said, sure, when do you want to come down? They said, how about 8 o'clock Sunday? And I laughed. I said, it's obvious you don't know Latino skateboarders. 8 o'clock Sunday morning, they're going to be in bed. But they came out on a Sunday around noon. It worked out good. But here, Channel 12 wanted to imitate. What is it? And it was great. It helped for our councilman to get all this stuff done. And so he asked Parks how much did it cost. I told him $600,000. Of course, they ran way over budget. But we got a skate park. So that was the biggest thing of it. But
What year was that?
oh my God. Oh,
I saw an article around June 2018 in the Norwood News.
yeah, I know. In 18 is when it was finally built. I think it was 14, 15, 16, someplace in there
Okay.
where we laid the groundwork. You see, that part of the problem is he was told by Parks they need 600,000, and everything they do is done like 2 to 4 years later.
Mm-hmm.
So by then they needed more. Plus the contractor, I was watching them what they were doing, and for example, one day it was a day like this. A day like today, you cannot lay concrete. It will not hold. They laid concrete. They had to tear it all up. But if I know it, and I'm a nobody, why? I can know people with strokes, with heart attack, but I don't know concrete. But if I knew that, why didn't they? So I mean, the cost went up. So I think it was finally opened in like 2018. But it finally cost just under $1 million. But it's great. And it's used every day. The skateboarders love it. Driving time. That was my biggest problem. That's better than planting, flowers over here. Although planting flowers was very important. We've now got 2 full-time gardeners. So a lot of the stuff that the volunteers used to do, we no longer do. We've got 2 gardeners. They're planting things. They're taking out weeds. It's beautiful. And the old looks much better than it ever looked.
It is. It's a beautiful park.
Yeah.
And it's very.
Well, Andy Cohen, we were very fortunate to have him as councilman for 8 years. He told me, he has Van Cortlandt Park, he has everything in Riverdale and Kings. He said that, in his opinion, this is the best, most rounded park in his part of, the city, the whole area up here. There's always somebody down here, some group doing something. And he was great for us. He used to bring in movies half a dozen times a year. I was talking to the founding sheriff, Friends of the Old. She was over the other day with her husband. And she said how she had asked this new guy, his replacement, about getting some movies over here in the old. He says, no movies. Click. And he used to bring in people from DOT that had helmets for bikers and everything. His new councilman, nothing. And he would bring in people with concerts during the summer. This new guy, he's been down here once. We got to get on his case. But so Andy Cohen, unfortunately, became a district judge. I think they only re-elect those every 10 to 12 years.
Wow. So I understand that you were not only recognized but honored by the New York State Hall of Fame uh, for veterans?
I
Could you
didn't know
correct
there
me?
was a Hall of Fame. Oh, wait. Oh, oh yeah, up there on, when you first came in.
Yes.
You see the first poster up there? That's from the Senate,
Right?
the New York State Senate. Every year, senators get to, oh no, this is political too. The Republicans used to control the Senate. I don't know if you're aware. And they started where every Republican senator can honor somebody from their district, a veteran from their district every year.
Okay.
When Democrats took control, they said, so can Democrats. They didn't prohibit the Republicans anymore. So yeah, the New York State Senate has a hall of, I guess they call it a Hall of Fame for veterans. And yeah, I got to spend a trip up to Albany and spent a day with my local senator. I got to introduce before the Senate and got a free lunch out of it. Yeah.
Great. We've heard a lot about you. Do you have a current family, extended family living here in the area with you?
No, my brother, it's funny. His lungs finally started while I was already in the Navy, and ironically stationed at Camp Pendleton. He went ahead and he joined the Marine Corps. He got stationed at Pendleton. He was at a unit where they're preparing everybody to go to NOM. It's the last step before you go. One night, I got a phone call from the base corpsman who worked with his unit, who had worked with me previously. He said, Doug, I want to let you know I'm sending your brother down to Pendleton. He's got pneumonia. This is August. Nobody gets pneumonia in August. And he got down, and there was a pulmonologist taking care of him. The pulmonologist, to the best of my knowledge, had never met me. But when Jeff gives his history and talks about my asthmatic history, pulmonologist says, yeah, you got a brother with bad lung, your lungs sound bad, let's get you out of the Corps. Which was great with me. I've always had better luck than him. And I thought I'd have better luck now, which we'll never know since he didn't get to go.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my brother. He unfortunately died during COVID. Oh,
sorry.
He was living in, again, like me, he grew up in Colorado. He then moved to Washington. When he died, he was living with his, I think it was on his fifth wife in Idaho. With her, I personally never met her. I met her electronically, but I think she killed him. By that, I mean, she prevented him from getting any of the immunizations that we had, the vaccines that we had, that would prevent you from getting sick. They wouldn't necessarily prevent you from getting COVID, but if you got it, your course wouldn't be as bad, and or you wouldn't die. He not only had a bad course, he died from it, which is unfortunate. Then, to make things worse, I told you how last year I happened to be in the hospital,
Mm-hmm.
and he was in the hospital at the same exact time. So I didn't even get to see him when he was dying. I went in on February 14th. He died on February 27th. I wasn't discharged till sometime in the middle of March. So what was worse, in fact, what freaked me out the most in the hospital was he was my only beneficiary on my life insurance policy and everything like this. I was afraid all this money was going to go to the Fed. I go, no. Because you'd be surprised. Well, I guess you wouldn't. Over 50 years, you can accumulate a lot in retirement, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Because you don't get to touch that as long as. And, I'm thinking, no, this isn't right. So the first thing I did when I got out, got discharged from Montefiore, was grab a friend of mine and go around and all the banks, businesses, everything in the Bronx, change my beneficiary. I also sent out letters to like Prudential. I've got 2 different policies through that. say, please change my beneficiary yesterday.
Uh-huh.
But I mean, something small like that can really freak you out.
Correct. Were there any other highlights in your service here in the Bronx, in the community that you'd like to focus on?
I've always been active in PA type politics.
Okay.
In fact, it's interesting. I've gone with Loretta a lot. She was a student down at
Loretta from Friends of Marshall Parklands?
No, but she was a student. Yeah, she was a student down at NY. I think it's NYU. And a couple of times they were down there, Veterans Day. I only joined one veterans organization after I got out of the military. Since PAs were founded as a division in the military, as a civilian out of Navy Corpsman. Within our organization of PAs, we have a Veterans Caucus. I joined them. I used to go to a lot of their meetings. All of our meetings were held either the first or second week in December, and they're held in Mexico. And the reason they're held the first or second week in December is it's a dead point in hotels worldwide in between Thanksgiving and Christmas. None of them are doing any business. A lot over Thanksgiving were full. A lot will get full during Christmas. It gives the hotel something to do with the few employees they still have there. It gives them an excuse to keep some employees on hand. And it gives us a very, bargain. Okay, now, you say, why would you hold your CME in Mexico? A lot of employers won't pay, for foreign CME, they won't pay the price of tuition. They won't pay the hotel, etc. There again, we're doing it the cheapest time of year. So we're making it cheap on the PA coming. Also, a lot of employers say you work just in cardiology. They expect you, if you go to a CME meeting, to be in cardiology. They don't want to see this American Academy of PA veterans. So it gives us an excuse where we can pay it ourselves. We can deduct it from our own taxes if that's necessary. Montefiore, you went CME, they never were that whatever about it.
Picky.
Yeah. Picky is a good word.
If there was a young Bronxite thinking about joining military service, is there any advice you would give them?
Any what?
Any advice?
Be careful what you think about. And investigate all the different branches. What do you like? What don't you like? When I came up here from Alabama, the PA that came with me had been in the Air Force. He'd spent over a year in Korea. I don't know why we had a lot of Air Force people in Nam, but for whatever reason they assigned him to Korea. But yeah, it depends upon what your likes are. And don't make mistakes. Like me, when I became a corpsman, I didn't know I'd be assigned, quote, Field Corpsman. The second they took my unit, when we graduated high school, and they sent us to Field Medical Service Corps, it branded me as a Marine Corps corpsman. I mean, I'm an 8404, a Field Corpsman. That's just that. All the education I'd had before that, all the work I did after that, would be fine in a submarine, would be fine on an airplane. They don't look at that. They look at 84, send it back to the Marine. So that, that'd be my other activities. I mentioned to you before you turned on the tape, my experience with Bill and Chelsea Clinton. It was interesting. About a decade ago now, there was a hurricane out in Far Rockaway?
Yes.
Yeah, and the destruction out there was unbelievable. I'd always been a financial supporter of Bill. Not that he knew who I was. And he sent all of us in the New York area letters saying a certain Saturday or Sunday, I forget which day, they're going to go out there and have a day of service. Would I like to join? Sure. I mean, what's one day of your life? My God, you could not believe the devastation out there. So it was nice to be able to help people as well. When we got there at 5:36 in the morning, we had to park at Brooklyn Navy Yard. There's only one road going in and out of the Rockaways during the summer. There's a subway that runs it. It was totally down. It was down going across the field. So people only had one egress the whole line. So we had to park our cars in Brooklyn. We had people with Smokey the Bear hats out there parking it. I guess once you've been president, they kind of give you priorities. Maybe Brooklyn, Navy, sure, park him here. But who's going to park? Oh, we'll get some Smokies. It was really cool. So, I mean, events like that come up. They're unpredictable. And you do what you do. Is it because I'm a veteran? No. But veterans tend to do things like that.
That's awesome. That is awesome work. Was there anything that you'd like to talk about your military career that we didn't cover?
Well, my career wasn't that long. It's 3 years and 9 months. They offer you 3 months early out. Who's going to turn them down? And I was getting ready to go to college, or so I thought. That I thought maybe I'm not. And that was interesting too. You're kind of in limbo. Duke says they want you. I told you I met one guy from Yale. All of a sudden I can't find him. Then I got a phone call from Alabama. So things worked out fine. So I had perfect timing. Had I had to gone to Duke the next year, I would have had to pay tuition. Alabama is a brand new program, free ride. So things happen when they happen.
That's right.
You have to take advantage of the situation.
We like to close out and end our interviews with a standing question. What does the Bronx mean to you?
Oh, wow. That is an impossible question to answer. No, it's fascinating. I've had a great life here. The Bronx has been very good to me. I've met a lot of nice people in the Bronx. Never had any problem with crime. Although I worry more about it now that I'm getting more elderly than I did when I was younger. Because for whatever reason, well, the reason's obvious. The younger males that are using drugs, of which we have quite a few in the Bronx, allegedly, tend to prey on people that appear weaker to them in public. So I now carry mace with me just in case. So I worry a little, not a lot. I've never been nervous about the Bronx, but a little more now than before. The Bronx, in general, it's good people. All different races, all different ethnicities. I work at a Jewish hospital, which has a lot of Black and Latino employees. Everybody seems to pretty much get along. Patients are patient.
Great. Yeah, I want to thank you, Doug.
Well, how long did you go?
About 40, 50 minutes.
Oh, so you're fine? Okay.
Oh, definitely. This is a lot of good material. I want to thank you. Not just for your service to the nation, but your service here to the Bronx. And to your fellow Bronxites. Thank you so much, especially for allowing us.
I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed living in the Bronx. I've really never had a problem here.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And Montefiore is Montefiore. I don't know if you read the most recent Montefiore discovery. We had a woman who had AIDS who needed a new heart. And we transplanted an AIDS heart. Another patient was dying with AIDS and transplanted her heart to this woman's heart. It's the first time the operation ever been done. And it was interesting. It was in the media that there's only 2 hospitals in the country that has met all the federal guidelines to do such a thing. The other one hasn't implanted with it. So it was cool. So we're still, one is still on the edge of history.
Wow.
Now, which is cool.
Definitely on the cutting edge of medical technology.